Hello, welcome to a try at something we've not done before. We're calling this Bears Go to the Pictures, where we discuss some recent films that have been out at the pictures. And I am your local cryptid who only comes out of the woods for Watsits and the cinema. And Matt is Matt's one who looks like a cryptid. He could be mistaken for Bigfoot these days, I suppose.
Smallfoot, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm not a terribly big person. I had toyed with the idea of calling this one Bears on the Toilet, or Bears Make Toilet, as a puntastic nod to the great Mark Commode. But I think you're right. Bears go to the pictures.
and I think first up, let's do Venom.
Yeah. We'll start with some fun, which is exactly what Venom is.
It's symbiote-tastic.
Yeah, if you like a bag of sweets, then you'll like Venom.
I liked the first Venom a fair amount. Although I feel that was accidentally great at times.
Yeah, I think they kind of, especially when the studio told them to, because the original was a 12 in the UK, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And a PG-13 in the States. And I think when the studio told them to pull it back to that from what should have been probably a 15 or an R.
I don't even think it's the age rating that makes an issue with the first Venom. It's when it falls into that very typical superhero film style. When it's Tom Hardy gurning in a lobster tank, it's it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I meant though. I think that like they had obviously the very modern superhero setup, but at the same time, a film that they were probably aiming at a 15 or an R, and then they were told they were going to have to pull it back, and at that and all those things mixed up together, and then Tom Hardy just going full Tom Hardy, like they found the magic.
I think they realised why people loved that first film.
Yeah.
And it was because it's at its core, when it's not being a superhero film, a romantic comedy between Tom Hardy, Venom, and I guess in the first one, Michelle Williams.
Yes.
I know these characters have names, but I'm only going to refer to them by the actors.
I mean, if not a romantic comedy, then certainly like an odd couple sort of bromance.
I'd call it a romance.
Film. I mean, I agree with you.
I would certainly call it romance once we get to the second film.
Yeah, you see that I get that.
It has the mid-film breakup.
I mean, it does, but it all.
Oh, spoiler! I would say now, this podcast is going to have spoilers for Venom: Let There Be Carnage, Dune, Last Night in Soho, and.
You've seen the Eternals, so you'll talk about.
I might talk a little bit about the Eternals, yeah.
Yeah.
And I might talk a little bit about French Dispatch. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have a change in director for the second Venom. Andy Serkis is directing of Gollum fame.
Absolute perfect choice. Which speaking
because
of Mr. Commode, he made exactly the same point when he reviewed it the other week. And because in the end, if you're going to be doing mocap, who knows mocap performance better than anyone than Andy Serkis?
We have another major personality added to the cast as well.
Yep.
In Woody Harrelson.
Harrelson. Yeah.
And
not Harrelson.
I really like the lady who played Scream as well, but I can't recall the actress's name.
Naomi Harris. She was Moneypenny in the Daniel Craig Bonds. Yes. And she was the witch in the third Pirates of the Caribbean film.
Yeah. She was good.
I mean, she's done many, many, many other things. She's an excellent actress.
Randomly, Stephen Graham.
Yeah, and randomly Stephen Graham. Yeah, like I mean, you could tell that this one was predominantly shot in the UK, except for a few externals where they had to do them in San Francisco because the what do you call it? Excuse me.
I like that Michelle
There
Williams.
were a lot of English actors.
I like that Michelle Williams' character is now engaged to her doctor boyfriend as well.
Yeah, same.
And that there is no getting like that. He messed up and he can't fix his mess up from the first time. I like that it's not like, oh yeah, all is like no that is gone. It's past. It's like.
Oh, it's excellent, and like Venom acts as a very real metaphor for his own personal demons in this as well, because like one of the reasons that Michelle Williams' character doesn't want to get back with Eddie Brock is actually because of the relationship that he has with Venom. That like as much as she absolutely loves occasionally being possessed by Venom, like she doesn't want that in the relationship all the time.
Oh, it's the scene when she goes to get Venom back for him.
Yeah.
And like obviously Venom is in the shopkeep.
Mrs. Shine?
Yeah, at that point. Yeah. And she's like, no, you gotta come. Like the whole, I just love the whole like. I didn't realize I cared about Venom until these films, and now I'm a Venom fan.
Like, I mean,
I also didn't realize Tom Hardy plays both parts until this film for some reason, or for the first film.
How did that not?
I don't know. It never clocked to me that Hardy was both in the first one.
And the thing is, he's gone balls deep in this one.
Yeah.
He really, really, really. But then he wrote the story for this one. Like, this is very much Tom Hardy's product now.
Thingy is great as Cletus Cassidy.
Oh yeah. Like, this is only 90 minutes.
It's a good 90 minutes, though, isn't it, man?
But this is a masterclass in why some films only need to be 90 minutes, because it does everything it needs to do. And I think that, like, yeah, you could have fleshed it out a touch. It could have maybe touched 2 hours, but I don't think it would have added anything.
I also wonder if potentially it's better, or it feels better, because it doesn't feel like an MCU film. Like, in the world where we've got a lot of MCU films, and I'll be honest, I'm still gonna be at everyone most likely, but various people are starting to feel.
I've missed the 3
fatigue
this year.
Fourth one still to come.
Which one's that?
Spider-Man.
Do you count that?
I mean, at the moment, it's still an MCU film. It has Doctor Strange in it.
Yeah, true. I mean, I'll be going to see that one. But I haven't seen any of the others. There's a small chance I might catch Eternals before it finishes.
I think Shang-Chi is the most fun of the 3. Eternals may be the better film, despite what people are saying. But Shang-Chi also has the return of Trevor.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to watch at least 2 of those films, anyone who wants to watch some Disney films released this year, Disney Plus is £1.99 at the moment for a month. And and on Friday you'll get Shang-Chi and Jungle Cruise going live.
Yeah,
which are both
that's
Disney
the thing.
films.
I'm relatively tempted to do that. Actually take.
Also on Friday, you'll be able to watch Black Widow and Shang-Chi in IMAX enhanced format.
Yeah, which I'm quite keen on. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily add any extra, because if you've got a 4K TV, you've got a 4K TV. That's not going to change it. But the aspect ratio, which is cool, because obviously, it doesn't always happen.
It's not IMAX format that is for free, like say Justice League was.
Yeah.
It's IMAX enhanced which is kind of almost 16:9, as in it nearly fills your 16:9 television.
Well, I mean, it's like what they did for the Dark Knight Blu-ray.
The problem is, there's so many shifting aspect ratios these days that part of the time, when I start watching a film, I'm having to check, okay, what aspect ratio is this film, so I can tell, is my TV doing something funky to it, or should it look like this?
Yeah, because the last thing you want is there's some distortion as well, don't you? But yeah, that'd be cool. I'll be, I mean, at $1.99, I'm very tempted. Very, very.
There's
tempted.
other good stuff on there. You could watch you could watch Mando and catch up on that.
Well, I mean, that's it. I can watch Mando. There's all the Marvel TV series that I've not seen as well, which you know, I'm as I say, I might take advantage of that before we get to and then try and catch Eternals before it leaves the cinema.
Yeah. But one,
so that I'm up to date for Spider-Man.
I mean, judging from how much it made this weekend, Eternals will stick in the cinema for a while. WandaVision, in terms of a TV show, WandaVision is excellent. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Loki is Marvel doing Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And then later this month, we've got the Kate Bishop show.
So I'll probably I'll see what I see, because we're very close to finishing our Star Trek run now. So we're in the last half of the last season of Voyager.
I think it might only be available, however. Obviously, you'd get it for a month, but I think the offer's only available until up until Disney Plus Day on Friday.
So I'll get it on Thursday.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, Venom. It's good.
Venom. Yeah. Obviously, we said spoilers. We don't want to give too many spoilers away. No. Anyway.
Just if you like fun, and you want to see Tom Hardy it up.
Oh yeah, I mean this is Tom Hardy and Andy Serkis in particular as a director, just going, I tell you what, let's have 90 minutes of lols. As I said at the beginning of this,
I love, one thing I do like about this film is how a lot of superhero films would want their leading man to look presentable. And I love how all these films just double down on the fact that no, Eddie Brock is an absolute mess of a man. He is not at any point going to look anything but like.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like that because obviously he is represented in this universe at least as the everyman. Yes. Because obviously at some point there was probably a thought within Sony as well that if the Spider-Man deal didn't necessarily work out properly, that potentially Eddie Brock could have been their Spider-Man within their film franchise that they're building. Obviously, Morbius is on the way. Yeah.
Which I'm willing to give a benefit of a doubt because of these two Venom movies.
Yeah. I
hold little faith for it, but the little bit I do hold is because of these two films, and it's like, Sony have actually done a good job here. Maybe.
I mean, the thing, like looking at the trailer, I think it looks like it might be no worse than either of the two Fantastic Four films.
Yeah.
The Ewan Griffith ones, not the more recent one, which is fine. I thoroughly enjoyed those films.
I've never seen them.
They're films of that era.
Yeah.
But fine. They're not bad films of that era. They're good films of that era. They're not up there with the best of Raimi Spider-Man. They're not up there with the best of Singer's X-Men. As much as both of those have aged, the quality obviously is still there. But they're just all right and worth a watch. So if you see them around, give them a watch. Should we? I think we should review actually give a score, because we do have scores.
I don't do scores. Even on my letterbox, I've dropped off scoring. I think. I give opinions. I don't give scores. Scores are pointless.
We have our patented cold light of day scale.
I'm moving away from scoring.
Well, I'm going to give.
I use Letterbox, you see, to keep track of what I watch. And
Yeah,
when I started using Letterboxd, I went back to scoring because it has a star system.
yeah.
But I've dropped off it because I had to start using halves to differentiate between things, and at that point I'm just like, no, I'm done. I'm done with scores. But if I will tell you what I did give, because I was scoring when I watched Venom.
Mm.
So I shall tell you what I did give Venom, and then you can
Mm.
give your score.
Well, I'm still going to use the cold light of day scale for obviously for those of you who are aware of it. The cold light of day is the most average film ever made, to the point that it's arguably one of the worst films ever made. And because of that, a 3 out of a 5 on a 5-point scale is the cold light of day. It is so in the middle that you have no feelings about it whatsoever. So if we ever score a 3, that's almost as bad as giving it a 1. In fact, in some ways, it's worse. This, I'm going to throw a big fat 4 on this.
I gave it a 4 as well.
Yeah, like, it's not a perfect film. And at 90 minutes, it probably wouldn't be a perfect film. I know we've just said it does everything it needs to do. It does do everything it needs to do. And it's one of those films that, yes, you probably could wait to watch it at home. But if you want, especially with all of the cinema deals that there are out there, obviously View do £5 tickets, Odeon have their membership things and stuff like that. If you want just a couple of hours of absolute joy, go and catch Venom before it leaves the cinemas, because it's well worth it. You won't regret spending your £5 or whatever it is to go and see it.
Unless
Absolutely
you really
spot.
don't want a funny romantic comedy between Tom Hardy and a slimy symbiote.
Yeah. But then, really,
and there's a set of people who I know would not have fun with this film.
Well, let's face it.
But
if Mark Kermode,
I'll tell you one thing. I wouldn't want to be their friends.
Exactly.
Because they're no fun themselves.
As I was saying, if Mark Kermode, who is one of the, at times, one of the snootiest film...
He's not, though. That's the thing with Mark Kermode. He
used to be. As he's grown...
He's always been a champion of stuff that isn't.
Yeah,
but older stuff that isn't. Like, it's that weird thing where... I think people who watch a lot of films in general, like, you will celebrate the films of the past that critics at the time considered
because
mainstream and shit. But
he runs, like, Hammer horror film festival.
I think it's a thing that unfortunately plagues a lot of people who watch a lot of films, not just critics, but in general, that the mainstream of your time is looked down upon.
Yeah.
And it's time that then, like, I don't think we'll ever but there's going to be certain bits of the MCU, for example, that I think will be remembered well. And I think it's actually things like Eternals that right now are having a bit of a drumming. Or Iron Man 3.
I think the thing with Eternals, is that the fact that Disney have actually had the guts to not cut the gay sequences in the countries that have asked for it to be cut, and that they've stood up to them. That's something, because obviously in previous films they have done edits for territories that don't want certain things in it.
I can imagine Chloe Zhao potentially put a foot down on it.
And fair play to her, fair play to the cast. And to be honest, fair play to whoever at Disney has said, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I watched the Kermode review of it the other week. It was fantastic. I don't know whether you saw it. I know we talked about it, but he said that...
Yeah, I did watch it after you.
He didn't get to go to the premiere of it, and because he had to review it that day on the Sam and Mayo show.
He went to a 4D showing?
He went to a 4D showing, which was the first time he'd ever been to a 4D thing outside of a theme park. So it was the first time he'd ever seen a full feature film. And he said he had the time of his life watching. And the thing is, there are certain films, and I imagine this one is one of them, most certainly, that if you have the option to go and see a 4D film, they are incredible. Like I saw the first Doctor Strange in 4D. I saw Independence Day 2 on 4D. Seen Valerian and the
God, I love
City of
that.
a Thousand
I love
Planets.
that trash fire of a movie.
Yeah, like, but there are certain films, especially like visually impressive ones, that if they're a bit of fun, and you have access to a 4D screen, go for it. I know they cost a few extra quid, but if you want a different cinematic experience, like, it can be one of the greatest experiences that you'll have in the cinema. And I think that's, for me, that's why I still love cinema. And we will talk about that later, because I went to the exact opposite type of screen for last night in Soho, which was the right type of screen. But again, we'll talk about it. So yeah, Venom. I think we both gave that 4 stars. Both well worth watching. Both agree it's well worth watching. So what next, James?
So next up is well, Matt, tell me, what is fear?
What is fear?
Yes, what is fear?
It's the mind killer, James.
It is. It is indeed.
Fear lives in a little box.
And we are discussing Dune, the 2021 film, not the Lynch film. First up, better or worse than the Lynch film?
Significantly better, but
I love the Lynch. The Lynch, don't get me wrong, David Lynch's Dune is bad. It is a mess. It makes barely any sense. However, God, I love that film.
Part of the reason it doesn't make any sense is because Lynch was trying to make a 3.5 to 4 hour film.
Yeah.
And the thing that got released at the cinema was 2.5 hours.
The second half of it is just nonsensical for the most part.
Well, the problem is, obviously, with Dune 2021,
it's only half a film.
The smart but ballsy decision to cut the book in two.
And for anyone who's read the book, I think it ends roughly in. I think the book is split into like 3 sections, and this ends just at the start of section 2.
And so,
but let's just this is Dune. But I'm going to let you tell us the director's name.
Denis Villeneuve.
That is significantly better pronunciation than I would have pulled off, because I can't even pronounce simple words.
I remember when Blade Runner was coming out, and I watch a lot of like IGN and similar content, and of course all of that is based in San Francisco. So there isn't obviously a huge French or Francophone population there. It's more of a Hispanic population. So all of them were pronouncing it as if it was Hispanic name. So it was Villanueva. Like all of them. Like they hadn't looked it up. They hadn't like taken the hint that he was a Quebecer or anything like that. It was just like, so it was very interesting. It was like listening to you when you've like just read a word and never heard it.
We have a stat cast here.
Oh yeah,
Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, Josh Brolin as Gurney, Oscar Isaac as Leto.
Yeah.
A standout performance of from
which character?
Aquaman.
Oh yes.
The reason I'm pulling a blank is he's not listed in my listing of a cast at all. Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, the most sci-fi name ever.
It is. It's a very sci-fi.
It is. And Star Wars is inspired a lot by Dune, to be fair. But it is. It's like okay, we've got Leto Atreides, Gurney Halleck, Chani, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, Beast Rabban Harkonnen, Toofer, and then we have Duncan Idaho and Paul. We have Timothée Chalamet as Paul,
who does a wonderful, wonderful, like right on the line of understated
yes,
performance in this. Like even 3% less, and it would have been just dry and flat, and like he gauged that. Like
he's a
him
cracking
and
actor. Every time I see him in something, I'm like, I don't know why he surprises me every time. I don't expect it. Like, I don't know why I'm not expecting it, but
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Like he was great in Little Women. Which, if you've not seen it, it's definitely on one of the services these days. It's brilliant.
No, he's outstanding, absolutely outstanding.
That's the thing. This film is. No, I don't think this film. There's a lot of emotion in this film.
Yes,
but it's like there's the moment in the cemetery on the Atreides planet Caladan. When Caladan, yes, sorry, where Oscar Isaac's Leto Atreides like tells him that even if he doesn't want to be Duke one day or anything like that, he'll be everything he ever needs him to be, his son. It's like, oh, that's so.
You see, it's like you see even things like that. That line is such a cheesy line that in the wrong hands, that could have killed any emotion. And yet, in the right hands, in this case, it was spot on. Like there are so many. Like I mean, you mentioned Star Wars earlier. There are so many like Star Wars-esque lines in this at times that, like, delivered incorrectly, could have just killed any of the hard work that went into this. Because this is a Shakespearean level, like, drama at times. Like I felt like I was watching Macbeth or Hamlet or something. Like this was dark and visceral, and I could literally feel the tension and the in my arms. Like it was just. And I unfortunately I missed it at the IMAX because Eternals had taken the IMAX screen at my my local cinema.
See, I saw it at the IMAX. I went full IMAX. I like none of these modern
small ones,
like smaller IMAXs that they made compromises on to get more IMAX screens out in the world. No, Printworks, full on, couple of buses high, very explosive projector.
Yeah.
IMAX.
You see, that's the problem at my local Odeon. Obviously, because of the Rona, they've got 2 IMAX screens there, but they tend to only use one of them.
Yeah, 2 IMAX screens in one cinema.
2, yeah.
I assume again they're the more modern ones.
One of them's a full Beast Boy.
Shouldn't be.
It's.
There's 3 in the UK. Bradford.
It's not. All right. It's not a full Beast Boy, but it's like the step down. It's not the small IMAX ones, but it's still a big one in a huge auditorium. And they just don't use it that much. Which is a shame because they've closed the gallery at the Odeon here as well, which was a great cinematic experience. I bloody loved going to the gallery shows.
I believe Dune is fully shot for IMAX as well. It's not one of those kind of some of it is, some of it isn't. I think the whole.
Oh yeah. I mean now that number 2's been greenlit.
Yes, that was my biggest coming out of it. I was like, oh god, I still don't think we're gonna get number 2, and I really need number 2 now. But thankfully, I mean, you didn't have that problem. It'd all been greenlit by the time you.
Oh yeah, and
I went opening weekend.
So I'm there. Of course, when number 2 comes out, there'll be a double header at the cinema.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to do the double bill.
Oh, I'm going to do the double bill.
Maybe we should make maybe we should travel to a full blown IMAX
Aye.
and make an event of it.
I think we should too. Certainly.
It's a few years out yet anyway. 2023, I think, is its release.
Probably. Yeah.
They've said they're going to start filming next July.
So, but yeah, it was.
Also worth pointing out, Rebecca Ferguson, great as Lady Jessica.
I mean, there isn't a weak point in this.
We didn't get to see much of, just through the nature of the type of it, of when it being, of where it's set. We didn't get to see much of Zendaya's Cheney outside of Visions.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that, to be honest, because I know that he's said that the next film will be told from her perspective.
I like that idea.
Yeah, as Paul ascends to whatever he's ascending to.
Because it's worth noting that Dune is not pro Messiah. Like, Dune is about the problems with necessarily, especially when you stretch it over the next books and stuff. Because he has said, I think he wants to do a third film as well, which covering Children
the second
of...
book. Yeah, Children of Dune.
Dune Messiah, sorry, not Children of Dune, Dune Messiah. Yeah. Which is all of Paul's story.
Yeah, he wants to complete Paul's story, because after that, it gets a bit weird.
After that, I think you follow Leto II, who eventually turns into a giant sandworm.
Well, he becomes God, doesn't he?
Maybe he becomes a sandworm.
Yeah. But
I like the that is. I will say I prefer Lynch's sandworms.
Yeah.
That said, all the other the design work here, like that one for Copter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all the art direction is.
I think that, I mean, to be honest, for me, that was probably one of the more challenging things I would imagine in this film, because as much as the Lynch film suffers in particular in the third act, because it isn't really the third act, it's because the Lynch film takes 2 hours to get to where this film gets to in 2.5.
Yeah,
and then it crams what Denis Villeneuve is going to have another 2.5 hours into 30 minutes. Yeah, and that's why it's a mess. Like, to be honest, that first 2 hours of the Lynch film is absolutely spot on. Like, there's nothing wrong with it at all. If Lynch had been able to make 2 films or even 3 and cut it at that 2 hour mark, we would be telling a completely different story about the Lynch film. But the artistic decisions that he made for that film, and not just especially for the time, it is spot on.
There is always the ghost of Jodorowsky's Dune as well, right?
There is, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, that's.
But what we have of that film is concept art.
We have concept art
and
that
Mobius concept art, I think, lives as because Mobius was a great artist. Worth noting, actually, guys, when talking about authors, especially authors of comics, talk about the goddamn artists. They're the co-authors. It's not the writer did not create a comic on his own. I say this because. Waititi. God damn me.
Waititi.
Yeah, Waititi.
Yeah. You just hate people, don't you?
I don't.
If they don't have simple names like Paul, you just like.
They he's making a Jodorowsky and Mobius' Inkle as a film.
Yeah.
But all the stuff is just like, oh yeah, Jodorowsky's Inkle. Yeah. Mobius had a lot to do with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But yeah, that at least because concept art exists for Jodorowsky's Dune, the spectre of a Dune could have looked like that is always over.
I think there is that. I mean, obviously, Geiger was involved in that as well. So, you have an idea of what that film would have looked like. I think the thing is that, obviously the as I say, the stylistic and artistic choices for the Lynch film are so spot on as well, and we do
Yeah.
have that film.
You have the
and like,
and then you get the wonderful moments where they attack people with bird boxes.
um, and it's like, so
I rewatched
think,
it recently actually because it's had a
yeah,
4K remaster put out by Arrow.
mm.
God, it looks stunning in 4K.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stunning film, like, and you just have to be aware that that last half an hour does ruin it.
Yeah.
And because it's
It's arguably all set up, and then it just puts the rest of the plot, as you say, in the half-hour ending.
yeah, and like
There's been a lot of talk about where this one decides to end, and how it feels like not a. But I actually liked it as an ending. It makes it works so much into his prophecies, right, into his visions.
Yeah.
That ending with all of them in front of him, like works. Can we also say how utterly they managed to sell because it's ridiculous? Sam power. And these are all lines from a book, it's worth noting, so it's not like...
Oh, yeah.
But, like...
that was what I was saying earlier about the
moment...
Leo line about being my son. Like, it could... There's so many lines that could be terrible.
And it obviously serves as
terrible.
The important moment of it shows how compassionate, I suppose, that the Atreides are as opposed to the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moment at the end where they see the Worm Riders as they're walking towards like one of the Fremen towns, and he just looks at his mum and goes, "Sam power."
Yeah. And yet, it worked. It worked. It was like there is a master craftsman at work here. Like, Villeneuve is. I mean, me and my wife were having this discussion. There are very, very few directors now who have the pull of being a named director. Like Spielberg, obviously, still has that pull. I think purely out of
and got to make Dune after Thingy flopped as well.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like,
by the way, Blade Runner great.
Money wise, the only two guaranteed hits as directors.
Sicario. I thought you meant his only films that made money.
The only two guaranteed hits as directors are Spielberg and Nolan. That's it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there are any other named directors that have, like, I mean, Nolan in particular.
Gunn maybe. Gunn maybe. I reckon he's working it in IP, but I reckon this first film out of IP, James Gunn as a name would sell.
I think now, yeah, I think he's probably got to that point. I
think,
but I mean,
Coogler might be getting to that stage.
Coogler, no, I don't know.
The problem is they've been working with. It's got to be interesting to see what people have been working in IP for a lot of the past few years do with their first films out of those IPs.
I think it also depends on the scale of what they go for, because obviously with Nolan went, okay, Batman, and then let's make The Prestige.
Peel.
And that was a nice, and then I still don't think they're at that level.
You look at the amount of money, you look at the amount of money that Get Out and Us made. I'd say Jordan Peele is a name that sells on this is a Peele film.
We'll see how Candyman does.
He's produced. He was the producer there, yeah. Although Candyman did very well, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it's been out. Candyman's been and gone now.
Yeah, I need to watch it when it comes to the streaming service. I rewatched the original the other week. Actually still
critically,
holds up
the new
quite
Candyman
well.
did very well, but I'm not sure what it did money-wise.
But I mean, my point is that, like, Nolan's one of those weird freaks like Spielberg, in that, like, Nolan can make $1 billion out of a non franchised film. Like,
we'll see on his next film as well.
We'll see on his next film.
Because while Tenet was obviously very hampered by the pandemic, I'm not entirely convinced it was solely for pandemic that made
I
Tenet
don't.
not as
Yeah, I mean,
successful as it
I
could
get the
be.
feeling that Tenet may not have hit the magic billion, but I still think his name probably would have pulled into the high 100 millions. I think you like he's still got it. Whereas unfortunately, Villeneuve is someone who has Nolan's abilities, but for whatever reason so far, and Dune
Hasn't.
seems to be the thing that has changed that. Um, has made not flops, but films that haven't necessarily made as much money as people
Yeah,
would wish it to. Like
Dune, I
obviously,
think, hit at the exact right time.
I think it did.
And
It
it's
came out just
also
after.
it's at 330 million made, I think, so far.
Yeah,
I think also it's Lord of the Rings for a new generation. Like it's a new generation's Lord of the Rings potentially.
it could be. It could be. I mean, and I think hopefully the marketing for the second film really tries to hammer that home.
Yeah. I
Like
am,
because
however, going to have to move us on, unfortunately.
no. Cold Light of Day scale,
5 stars.
5 stars,
Yeah.
straight off. This is a very hard, solid 5. It's as close to perfect as a film can get, I think.
So finally, we are going to be discussing Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho.
Yeah, which is an Edgar Wright film.
Yes.
Mainly for all of its positives.
And its negatives.
So you go first then, because I think you're significantly more skeptical than I am.
I don't
like.
No, I'll be honest. The film is stuck in my head. I'm not sure how I feel about it. That's the weird thing. Like stylistically, it's a gorgeous looking film. Performance-wise,
there's some set pieces in that film that are just incredible.
Performance-wise, fantastic.
Yeah, especially the lead.
I don't know. I think, and maybe, sorry, I think something about the overall story didn't entirely sit well with me. And I can't put my finger on.
I think it's because it felt a bit too. By the time you got to the conclusion, I saw the conclusion coming, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
But by the time you got to the conclusion,
actually, no. I'll be honest. I think it did a good job of it's one of those things in retrospect, but I think I actually did a pretty good job of keeping that down key. Like I think it was a good surprise.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I'm not actually gonna spoil it. But just if it is some twists, I suppose.
Yeah. I got both twists.
Yeah.
I didn't get the full detail of the main twist.
Yep.
But I got both twists.
I picked the second one. I mean, the first one, as in the. But yeah. Yeah,
I think for me it was. I get what you mean.
Both leads, both Anna Taylor-Joy and
you mean the
Thomas
two
and
younger
Mackenzie
female leads? Yeah.
Were great. Terence Stamp and Diana Rigg did good, solid performances.
Stamp was genius casting. It's always nice to see a bit of Terence Stamp. I quite like Diana Rigg, although it was a slightly campy performance.
I think needs
towards
to be
the end. Yeah.
I think that might be part of the reason why. I think there's a conversation to be had about agency here, and I'm not sure. There's at times where, I'm not sure it's necessarily at times tells Phil he wants to. There's a weird, especially towards the end. There's this very weird kind of spin on who are the victims here.
Yeah,
and I think it wants to have a clear answer. I think it thinks it has a clear answer, but it's quite muddy. And I'm saying this in a way to try and avoid, because while we did spoil other films, I really think everyone should go and see this film blind if possible. Because the trailers did a great job of not spoiling anything.
Yeah. This is, I think even if you go out of this film feeling a little bit underwhelmed for the film as a whole, as a cinematic experience, this is a visual masterpiece. Obviously, budget-wise, this would be at the almost the exact opposite spectrum of Dune, or one of the Marvel films or anything like that. This was genius, for visuals and the music. And the perfect musical choices. I
really like Michael Ajayo's performance, as well as I guess a romantic lead, for want of a better.
And it was nice.
Matt Smith as villain was very.
Oh, mate. Yeah.
He is very chameleon-like, isn't he, as an actor?
Because he doesn't, his part realistically wasn't that big in this film, and yet it's so present and so dominant and absolutely perfectly delivered when he is there.
I think he does
it doesn't need any more.
He does such a good job at playing villainous, evil, bad people. I mean, you go back and look on his time, even his Doctor is probably one of the darker Doctors.
It certainly is. It certainly is. There's an unhinged element to Matt Smith's Doctor.
Yeah.
And that character always rides that fine line between manic and maniac.
And here it does the wonderful job of, when you introduce to him, he's this charming.
Yeah. I mean, what a. There were points in this where, because one of my thoughts for the next Bond is potentially, do you go back and do a period piece to just completely differentiate it from the Daniel Craig stuff? And Edgar Wright would pull that off, and Matt Smith would certainly pull off the Bond in my head for doing a period piece would be telling an honest version of the Connery Bond, of he is a misogynistic prick.
Yeah.
He just happens to be the greatest spy that's ever lived. So there is that question of, as a human being, he is absolutely awful, but as a spy and a killing machine, he is a necessity. And where do you draw the line? With that vision, and I think that bit where you first meet him and he's dancing, he's got the cigarette in his mouth, that is the Bond I have in my mind, of the absolute necessary bastard. And
see, I think the other thing I like about this film, I think part of the reason it hits home a lot is obviously back in uni we did a fair chunk of work on the period of British cinema that this is kind of set in, for want of a better term. This is a weird kind of mixture of Italian giallo films and 60s counterculture British cinema.
Yes.
If I was to be giving you a double bill film club right now, I would potentially pair this film with The Knack and How to Get It.
Yeah, or
you could also pair it quite well with any Dario Argento film.
What was the...
It would pair quite well with Saturday Night, Sunday Morning.
What was that film? It was a photographer who was a killer that was set in that era.
I'm not sure.
I've just seen if I can find it. Peeping Tom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would have put this lies somewhere between Peeping Tom and, say, one of Michael Caine's slightly darker films.
Have you
So
seen
like,
have you seen much in the way of giallo, like Italian giallo films?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Uh,
I don't think so.
the big ones would be Argento's films like Deep Red, Suspiria, Bird with a Crystal Plumage.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of that in it. It is a giallo film, arguably,
Hmm.
but through an Edgar Wright lens, because it's what Edgar Wright tends to do, and this is
Yeah.
very much an Edgar Wright film. Um, oh, that painted poster for it as well.
Hmm.
That's a stunning poster.
Hmm.
I want a
Lovely.
copy. Um,
Um, I said earlier about like choosing the cinema to go to, because I think that is also a very important thing with watching a film. Like a film like Dune, if you have the access to an IMAX, go to an IMAX. A film like this, I actually chose. And this is going to sound terribly hipster, but I went to Tyneside Cinema because I live in Gateshead, so it's a short walk from me. It's a tiny little independent cinema. It sort of acts as a museum. It does pop-up film studio stuff and stuff like that. But it's got some lovely little screens, but really high quality projectors, excellent quality sound. And I was in a screen that has 40 seats.
it's
Um, and it set the atmosphere for like
however,
oddly enough it had the smell of what I thought the smell of the film was.
it's an interesting point, however, right? Because you're
Hmm.
you're almost kind of living the same kind of dangerous nostalgic fantasy
Mm.
that the lead is living
Yeah.
in, right? That over the
Mm.
course of the film, she learns
Mm.
that, like, because the truth is, like, she's nostalgic for this era of London, this 60s era of London, but the truth is, it's not something necessarily worth being nostalgic for. Hell, the
Yeah.
film itself is almost guilty of a crime of what
Yeah.
it's proposing don't do,
Mm.
right? Like,
And I think this film is going to be one that will be talked about quite a lot in film studies classes, because there's from a creative standpoint, obviously there's loads to talk about. The use of color is incredible.
yes.
The lighting is superb. And then you've got those somewhat more meta details of talking about nostalgia. The film itself is obviously guilty of nostalgia, but at the same time, it teaches you to be wary of nostalgia. For all of its flaws, and there are, like, I think it has a relatively basic outcome as far as like it's a somewhat tropey horror film towards the end.
See, I don't
Um,
think it's
like
I'm
I
not sure
think
horror is the right.
it's a horror thriller. Like
Which
as
is
I say,
why I
think
think I would say it's a British giallo film. Because
yeah,
again,
I think
they
it's
walk that
I
line
think you've
between
got
thriller and horror as well.
yeah, like you've got that. I mean, it is a supernatural film, but at the same time, it's presented more in the same way that you'd think
Some of the
a
shots with the mirrors and the
oh mate,
yeah,
like that boggled the mind how they set that up.
yeah.
Because I know there must be some CGI work in some of it. Well, not CGI, but like there must be some
Yeah.
layover stuff in some of it.
Transparent
But like,
aluminium.
yeah, must be. But like where they put it, like in the dance sequence at the beginning, where like Matt Smith is dancing with both girls, actually, like
Yeah,
you can see where they dodge in and out. Obviously, you don't see them doing it, but you can see where the camera is. Like
yeah,
the camera is the third member of that dance. It's beautifully choreographed, and so you can see where they would have them dive in and out and what have you. But it doesn't ruin the magic. It actually makes the magic of the filmmaking
yeah.
itself even more potent. Whereas I think that the excuse me. There are other elements like simply walking down that mirrored staircase into the club where you can see the character in the 60s on the stairs, and you can see the character in
Yeah.
modern day in the mirror in the stairs. And it's so good that I can't like your brain doesn't want to believe that that was done in some sort of post effect.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's other beautiful bits later on where like it makes it look like a mirror, but it's actually just a sheet of glass in front of them, and like so. Obviously, then your brain reinterprets your memory of the staircase situation, and you think, well, actually, was it pieces of glass and it was another set behind them? But how did they do that? It's so well done. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
think
is a stunning
like
looking film, man.
I get your, I do get I understand your
like it's something I think
issues with
is
it.
meticulously crafted. I think it's a fine
Mm,
piece of craft.
mm.
And I'll be honest, I'd still give it 4 stars.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think there are the elements that you've mentioned of why it maybe doesn't reach 5 stars are a similar. I don't want to use the word disappointment, but like something along those lines, but nowhere near as strong as disappointment that I got with Get Out, because I didn't see Get Out for.
See, I loved Get Out.
You see, by the time I got to see it, because I was in Korea when it came out, and it got released in Korea 9 months after everyone else got it, because it wasn't ever going to get released. It was because there was it only got released in Korea because there was a huge number of Korean students actually that petitioned for it to get a release in Korea. So by the time I got around to seeing it, it was on a streaming service or something like that, or I rented it or what have you. And so the hype at that point was like absolutely unreachable. Like there was no way any film was going to touch.
See, I saw it after
Like,
you, and I still loved that film.
you see, I think for me it also I interpreted the trailers in a completely different way to what the film ended up being, and I think I preferred my interpretation of the trailers to what actually
But
ended up being.
on that note,
Mm,
I am going to have to pull the drawers to a close.
that's fine.
Are you going to be watching the new Ghostbusters?
Yes, probably.
Maybe we'll do one of these for that as well then.
Because that's had some very interesting, completely divergent reviews.
I think it might be interesting for us to do an episode on that. Obviously, shorter than this one because we'll only be talking about one film. But
yep. Unless we've seen something else
maybe
in the meantime.
maybe we can make Bears Day Out for Pictures a more regular feature.
Yep.
And on that note, guys, we shall see you soon. Have fun.